Hi everyone, welcome back to session number 2 of Short Stories Brick by Brick. And it occurred to me, I was showing you a few things here on my desk, in my office yesterday. One thing I forgot to show you was I have a stack of books next to me here, and a couple of them are books of poetry. This one is Only as the Day is Long by Dorian Lux. She's a wonderful, crisp poet, kind of with a working class mentality, and I love reading at least one poem at the beginning of every session when I sit down to sort of dunk myself in language and slow down a little bit. Another person I turn to oftentimes is Pablo Neruda, the great Chilean poet. Even in translation, kind of the music of his writing comes out. And so it's just part of my ritual when I sit down each morning, just to get in the head, that it takes to write. This is my current journal. Sometimes I'll just jot a few things that are going on in life, in my life, and then try to take a breath and zero in on maybe something I want to do for that day in my writing, or just anything else that comes to mind. But the act of writing kind of helps you grab onto your own life. Okay, so you might remember this sheet from yesterday, building our story with these 5 bricks: character, setting, plot, point of view, and revision and editing. Yesterday we worked on character. I showed you a postcard, and I had you take a famous person, living or dead, and put them in that scene and have them do something. You also worked with a character profile sheet, certain aspects of that, like age, how old is your character, what do they carry in their pockets, how do they move, things like that. And then toward the end of the session, I had you write about a character. It could be the same character that you were already imagining. A character comes into a room and does something. You don't tell us about the character, you just show what they do. So that's what we did. Today we're going to focus on setting. Where does your story take place and when? And I'm going to offer some tips on making a setting come to life in a vivid way. So, all right. Again, you are going to need a piece of paper, pen, pencil, or if you have a keyboard handy, you can use that. We're going to do a couple of exercises today involving setting. The first one is called music writing. I have next to me my ancient boombox, and I brought in 2 CDs. I'm going to play 2 snippets of songs, and it's going to last 2 to 3 minutes. And here's what I'd like you to do. Let me show you this first. Fiction writers try to use vivid details in order to create a world for the reader. Sights, sounds, smells, tastes, textures. While listening to the song snippet, write down the first place that you think of. Try to show that place. Use sensory details. Don't worry about spelling or complete sentences right now. Just write. Okay. So on your paper, go ahead and just put a little number 1 off to the side. I've got my paper here. You need to grab my pen. All right, everybody ready? The first place that comes into your head. Okay, go ahead and finish up that part you're on while I'm loading the second song. And then I'll read what I wrote. All right. First draft, right? Gonna own it. Steam, smoke rising from a vent, 14th Street, New York City. The smell of warm, salted pretzels. Traffic din, horn honk. The taste of black coffee. The feel of warm cup in hand, brisk air on cheeks. Tall buildings, gray sky, flecks of snow just beginning. Okay. Now put a number 2. What I'd like you to do for this second one is try to fit in all 5 senses. If you get stuck, think of your head and your hands or your feet touching something, okay? Just whatever comes into your head. And I know some of you are Justin Bieber fans, so this is Early Biebs, recorded in a remote cabin in Manitoba. Everybody set? Here we go. All right, go ahead and finish that part you're on. Holy cow, that was strange. But you know what? I'll go ahead and read. Sprinting ostriches, rising dust, open dry land, Namibia, 94 degrees Fahrenheit, the taste of strawberry milkshake, you're running too, while slurping a shake. You're barefoot, my God, thorns, rocks, warm dust, low trees in the distance, the sound of barking ostriches, and yelling ostrich trainers, run, run, ostriches. You know, the great thing about timed free writes, first drafts, or exercises like this is you just get out what's in your imagination. And sometimes you get some nice juicy stuff you could possibly even work with, and it's a bit wacky. Okay, that's music writing, and that's what we mean about trying to use some sensory details. If I were writing a story set in Namibia involving ostriches, I might not use all of those details, but I might pluck 1 or 2 or even 3 that seemed crisp, that immersed the reader in that scene. And that's my job as a writer. Each time I shift a scene, I want to include a sight or maybe a sound or a taste, some sensory detail to give that reader a sense of being there, giving them not only just that mental picture, but sometimes feelings in their body, like the taste of cold lemonade, the smell of fresh mown grass, okay? So There's a writer named Stephen King, and that man has written, I think, close to 100 novels, fantasy, horror, suspense. About 20 years ago, he published this book called On Writing, which is just has some really straightforward, simple advice on the craft of writing. And one of the quotes from that book kind of stuck with me, and I'll share it with you. Description begins in the writer's imagination, but should finish in the reader's. Now hold on a second and look at that again. Description begins in the writer's imagination, but should finish in the reader's. Now, some writers, I've noticed, really like description, and sometimes they'll give you paragraphs, pages even, about one scene, showing what it looks like. You run the risk, if you do that though, of having the reader say after a while, okay, I got it. Now just tell the story. On the other side is if you don't give enough detail, if it's so spare, the reader might say, you know, I don't get a sense of where this is taking place. So I feel that you want to aim for that middle sweet spot, just enough detail so the reader can fill in the rest in their imagination. Because isn't one of the great fun things about reading is that sort of telepathy between a writer and a reader. So I wanted to share that. And what I want to share next is an example of using setting details. And it's from this novel by one of my favorite writers, Jhumpa Lahiri. This is called The Namesake. It's about an Indian American family. They live back east in Massachusetts. The parents were born and raised in India, the kids in America. It's a pretty good book. And I'm going to show you something from the first page of that novel. This is how Jhumpa Lahiri helps pull you in. She has some character details and some setting details. Okay, I'll put that like that. All right. On a sticky August evening, 2 weeks before her due date, Ashima Ganguly stands in the kitchen of a Central Square apartment, combining Rice Krispies and Planters peanuts and chopped red onion in a bowl. She stares blankly at the pegboard behind the countertop where her cooking utensils hang, all slightly coated with grease. She wipes sweat from her face with the free end of her sari. Her swollen feet ache against speckled gray linoleum. She opens a cupboard, the shelves lined with a grimy yellow and white checkered paper she's been meaning to replace. Crisp, just enough to give the reader a sense of the place where they are. Let's do another exercise. If you're using a piece of paper, and have a sip of tea here, draw a line under what you were doing earlier with the music. And this next bit involves our attention to the world as writers in a very frenzied world. We need to slow down and notice before we can write anything that's vivid and true and crisp. This is called 5 Details in the Room, okay? The writer's attention to the world is crucial. I want you to pick out 5 details in the room you're in that other people have either never noticed or they stopped noticing. You can also frame this as yourself. Have you stopped noticing anything about the room that you're in? Or maybe you never noticed something about it. If you get stuck, go small. It could be a speck on the floor or wall or ceiling. It could be out the window too if you want, but try to concentrate on the room mainly. Sights, sounds, smells, textures. I'm going to have you pause the video when I say go in a second, and only take about 2.5 to 3 minutes max to make a quick list of 5 things. If you go more, that's fine. Do that. Go ahead and pause the video. Okay. So I'm going to share with you just one scene from my novel, The Brightwood Stillness. This is partly set at a high school in North Portland. Let me see what you need to know about this scene. One of the main characters' name is Nate, and he's a teacher at this school. The principal's name is Peter Winchell, and an ice storm is rolling in. Then toward the end of sixth period, the intercom clicked on, and Winchell announced there would be an early dismissal. Emergency bus routes were read off, warnings about fallen power lines given, and Nate decided to flow along with the frenzy by raising the shades and inviting everyone to come look. Lights, please, he said to Milton Valenzuela, a rotund, withdrawn student on the other side of the room. In the dimness, kids huddled close and listened to the rain crackle. The asphalt near the commons had already taken on a milky sheen. Man, most teachers won't let us go to the windows, someone in the crowd said. Milton, who had just joined the group, stood next to Nate and mumbled, uh-huh. Amid his students, Nate raised an index finger to his lips and waited for everyone to catch on. First, only a few kids saw, then more heads turned, and soon the room was silent, save for a few laughs. 37 sophomores and Nate in the low gray light, gazing out at the freezing rain. For almost a minute, the quiet held, and he observed the teenagers around him. How many had already been hardened to the point of not stopping to watch and listen? How many came from homes where such a pause would be looked upon as wasteful or downright weird? From reading their poems and short stories, though, he knew most of their souls were still open, even if just barely in some cases. He turned to Milton, the chubby brown face, eyes transfixed on the nearest window, for a few moments free from the teasing and the strain, and sensed it again, the power of teaching. The ability to create a space where kids could step away from the hurry and the drama long enough to just notice things. It could still give him goosebumps. Okay, so you're going to think about where your character lives and when. And each scene you use in your story, you're going to offer a few sensory details to put the reader in that scene. Now, let me give you a quick preview to next time. We're going to go to brick number 3 in the next session, plot. You're going to think of some sort of obstacle, some problem that your character has to deal with. And that's going to provide some tension, and it's going to make the reader want to find out what happens. Okay, so I'll offer a few ideas for that next time. And until then, take good care.